Welcome to the SmartTechCheck Podcast, hosted by Mark Vina, your home for candid, insightful, and provocative conversations about the smart home automation, security, smartphones, PC and console gaming, and much more.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Vina, host of the SmartTechCheck Podcast. Today's Thursday, August 17th, 2023. Got a great podcast today. We've got John Quain, who writes for the New York Times, Smart Cities, and Tom's Guide. Stewart Wolpin, who scribes for Popular Mechanics, AARP, Techlicious, Investopedia, and other fine publications. And pinch hitting for Rob Pecoraro is Dwight Silverman, the veteran technology journalist for the Houston Chronicle. Gentlemen, how are you?
Very good.
Doing great.
Dwight, how are you doing, by the way? How's Houston? Is it really super duper hot? Or is it,
Let's see. Right now, it is 103 degrees outside and probably about 60% humidity. And supposedly we had a cold front go through on Tuesday, and all it did was take a little bit of the humidity out of the air. But we're hoping for better weather towards the end of the week.
Well, and I bet New York is equally steamy. New York is not paradise in August.
Well, it's not hot. It's only in the low 80s, but it is very high humidity today.
Yeah,
it's a sauna out there.
Yeah,
well, and when I remember those days when I worked in New York years ago. You know, when you hit July, August, and September, the subway system has a unique aroma.
That's year round. That's not just the summer months.
That's true. It's a little bit less when it gets cold out, but still. Well, Stuart, I'm going to surprise you. I have to bring this up because we chatted about this the other day. Here's a photo of Stewart Wolpin on the field at Citi Field. You know, I was telling him yesterday that I would love one day to walk on a major league field. Now, I believe it or not, Dwight, years ago when I worked at Compact, when the Astrodome was still being used for the Astros, I think we sold a bunch of computers to the Astros, and they let us use the field. We were able to rent the field for the entire consumer division, which I was working in, to actually play a softball game on it.
Wow,
that was pretty remarkable. And by the way, the artificial surface, that was the original artificial surface. You know, it was like playing with golf balls on a hard surface. It was that crazy, but. Stuart, so are you going to try out for the Mets? Is that the game plan? Is that what you're going to do?
Well, they need a lot of bullpen help. So if they don't mind the ephus pitch on every pitch, I'm in.
Well, I saw that on your Facebook. I know I didn't ask you for permission, but I had to bring that up when I saw that on your Facebook.
I was season ticket holder of the day.
Well, wow. The way the Mets are going right now, just about every season ticket holders, if they have any left, will get a chance to pitch the Mets, let alone walk on the field.
Yeah. You know, and I understand, Stuart, that Justin Verlander's number is available. So
yes, exactly right. I'm shooting for it. I don't think there's any chance of a Mets retiring that number.
Oh wow! I know. Isn't that crazy? No one would have predicted. That whole what's happened with the Mets and the Yankees. But that's another podcast. So I'll probably do it 3:00 in the morning. So a few topics we want to hit. One topic, John, that you brought up, which I think is interesting that I want to chat about, is that there are some reports that ChatGPT's traffic has declined month over month. I haven't seen any stories yet about a more representative sample of the entire Gen AI category. But I tend to think you might be thinking there's something lurking there. Do you think this is an anomaly? Because there are more. Obviously, ChatGPT is not the only company in town. Or do you think this is unique to ChatGPT?
I don't think it's unique to ChatGPT. I mean, I think it is indicative of something happening here. According to ChatGPT, which doesn't have access to real-time data or current events. So it can't provide, quote, it can't provide specific information about the current traffic situation for ChatGPT or any other platform. But then it goes on and it lists, it could be technical issues, user behavior, competing services, blah, blah, blah. I think the obvious thing, though, is it's wrong most of the time, right? That's the problem, and people are kind of learning that. They're doing. I kind of challenge anybody. Give me one answer for an English question, and there's going to be something wrong in that ChatGPT answer, and there's going to be something wrong in every single generative AI answer. It's almost impossible for them to get this stuff right, and I think people are kind of realizing it now, going, well, which part of this is wrong? I'm not sure which part is wrong, and then it's like easier just to do it yourself, I think, is what people are learning about it. And it was fun for a while. Not sure where it's going to go from here.
But Dwight, let me bring you into this, because I don't know if you and I have had a conversation about whether you use Gen AI in your work from day to day. I use it. I use it more, to help me kind of form my thoughts on a topic, but I don't rely on it 100% to actually write something. I think that it's interesting to me. I find these tools more accurate and more impactful in small bites, rather than write a 1,000-word article on a topic. It first of all, at least ChatGPT, I find it's very repetitive. It'll repeat the same theme 4 times in different ways, rather than, hey, write 50 words on this specific topic. It seems to do a better job. What's been your experience so far?
Well, I've actually, that's kind of the way I've seen it. I use it, like if I want to write about a topic, I'll kind of give it a prompt and see what's in there, just kind of to make sure that I cover bases. And most of the time it says what I was going to say anyway. I had a really interesting experience where I doubted ChatGPT and it was right and I was wrong. I did a story on competitive pinball in Houston, which turns out is a really funky, interesting subculture here. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to figure out in the story if pinball had ever been illegal in Texas or in Houston. And so I was asking ChatGPT this, and it came up with kind of this detailed answer that read like it was making it up. And so I kind of poked around on the internet. I couldn't find anything on it. I went back to ChatGPT and I asked some questions trying to determine where it got that information. And it led me to the Houston Chronicle, where my column runs, and I talked to the librarian, and she couldn't find it, but it read like something familiar. And the way some of the wording was, I thought, is this particular reporter? And I asked him, and he had written it. And the reason I couldn't find it in a search is that, like a lot of newspapers, the Houston Chronicle had removed it because it was part of a blog and they weren't using that blog anymore. And so ChatGPT had ingested it at a time when it was available and then gave this to me. And I was, skeptical because, hey, it's ChatGPT. Of course you're going to be skeptical. And so, but it turned out to be correct. So while you can say that, yeah, there's going to be everything, there's going to be something wrong, oftentimes there's something right, and your own skepticism about it may keep you from using the information that would be useful.
Stewart.
Well, like John, I asked ChatGPT why his traffic was going down and got a very similar response. But then I also discovered the accuracy business. And so I asked ChatGPT about its lack of accuracy or its declining accuracy. And it said the accuracy of ChatGPT can fluctuate for a few reasons. Changes in the training data, fine-tuning methods, or updates to the model architecture could impact its performance. Additionally, there are new and uncommon topics. The model might provide less accurate responses. Regular updates are made to improve accuracy, so keeping up with the latest versions, in other words, pay them more money, can help migrate our decline in accuracy. So I'm with John on this. I think, that perhaps they were talking about in the stuff that I was reading that it's the numbers that for some reason they were having trouble on, not the sort of more subjective stuff that Dwight was talking about. But the other side of this is AI is being embedded in so many other platforms other than just ChatGPT, for one thing. Alexa and Siri are becoming much more conversational. The second thing is we have to remember that we are still in the very early stages. And I think that all of us, including everybody who's tried to use it, is expecting Star Trek-like computer responses. And this ain't the 23rd century, it's only the 21st. So I think quantum computing, increasing computing power, as well as additional training, will increase this. But I think we're in the sort of stage where we were with the electric light bulb, which we'll be talking about later. It was in the 1890s. We're still at the very early stages of this technology, not only becoming more accurate and becoming more conversational, but being embedded in a lot more things where it becomes much more of a normal thing on a day-to-day basis, as something that is special. We have to go to ChatGPT.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add to this, and Stewart kind of hit on it at the end, is that ChatGPT was the new shiny thing. And everybody rushes to it, it uses it, and then it kind of becomes less the shiny thing. You're seeing the same thing happening to a certain extent with Meta's Threads, Twitter clone. And I think that, it was easy for millions of people to jump on it and easy for, people to give it a try. But if it wasn't compelling and continue to be there, they have moved on. There'll be a core group that will stay there and will help develop it out as a culture. But all new technologies do this. There's kind of this big bump at the start, and then it levels out.
We could talk about this forever, and I want to make sure we get the other two topics. But the thing that's curious to me is that I think all of these these large language model tools. I mean, Qualcomm is now doing some work that's interesting, that you'll be able to do this kind of work in an offline type of basis. You can do it on the device, which is intriguing. Although I would suspect that without a connectivity capability, it's probably going to be less smart than doing it in a non-connected environment. But I find that, especially ChatGPT, because once you start playing with it, I'm sure you've all tried to do this. As you play the game, let's stump ChatGPT. Let's see if we can ask a question. And I've asked it a couple of very fact-based questions that it has gotten wrong. And so not often, but it has. And I also think that if you're a creative person, you've got the Screen Actors Guild now on strike still. They're still trying to figure out a deal because they feel like they're going to be put out of business by Gen AI. I think the creative process, they have less to worry about, because these Gen AI applications are great backward-looking tools, are good backward-looking tools, but you really can't ask these Gen AI tools to make a creative decision where it's not based on data or based on an algorithm. It's based on a human intuition that sometimes it's not very logical. That you're writing something and you might go down a pathway that normally, a computing device wouldn't go, because it's not a linear based kind of approach. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think it's only going to get more interesting as all these new, every major silicon company out here in the Valley, gentlemen, are working on or have come out with very, very powerful pieces of CPU silicon that have AI algorithms built into them. So it's going to be very, very interesting over time. Let's hit the next topic. And, Dwight, we're exchanging messages. I believe you've got a column coming up about, and I love this, the chaos in streaming. Not to say that there has never been any chaos in streaming, but apparently, let's start, because this is really intriguing, because a lot of people are starting to get hit with some of the issues that I'm sure you've written about.
Sure. Well, this year was the 10th anniversary of me becoming a cord cutter. It was back in April. So I've done this for a decade. A lot of people have done it for longer than that. And when I started out, kind of the main thing that you did was you rented or downloaded shows and movies from iTunes or Amazon, video on demand, as it was called then. And there wasn't much beyond Netflix in terms of independent streamers. Of course, a lot of that has changed. And the reason that I became a cord cutter was I was paying, thousands of dollars a year on cable TV. And I was able to reduce my my annual television bill from, I think it was close to $1,500 down to $600 a year, and which was substantial. And so I kind of went back and did the numbers again, and it'll be in my print column on Sunday and online on Monday, and looked at kind of what the numbers are now, and they're about the same. I subscribe to Hulu, I subscribe to Netflix, I subscribe to HBO Max. This is at the moment. I add and drop these as needed, and Apple TV Plus. I have Paramount Plus, but Paramount Plus has this unique thing where you can keep feeding it promo codes, even though you've already done this, and it gives it to you for free. So I've got Paramount Plus, and I haven't paid for it for months. But I add and drop as I need, and I'm not buying TV seasons anymore, except occasionally. I just bought Dark Winds on AMC, but the price is the same, and basically with inflation, I probably am paying less. But what's coming is all of these streaming services are jacking up their rates because you really do have to pay for the content you create. They are all going to start cracking down on passwords during password sharing. During Disney's latest earnings announcement, CEO Bob Iger said it's coming next year in 2024. Netflix has actually had good results with its crackdown. They added 6 million new subscribers in the last quarter. And so I think that people are looking at this and going, well, we can make a lot more money than we are now, and the price is going to go up. But I have to tell you, regardless, it's going to be cheaper than cable. There was a Financial Times story this week that had some kind of questionable numbers about what the average cable bill is. It said it was $83, and you look at the methodology, and that looks pretty wrong. Consumer Reports puts it in the $200, and I think that's probably more accurate. So it's going to have to go a long way to beat the value that is streaming. You just have to not subscribe to everything, add and drop as you need, and just be smart about kind of what you do. Oh, and stay away from things like YouTube TV and the faux cable packages that actually are priced like cable. You're not going to save much money that way.
Right. But Stuart, let me pull you into this, because the thing that, and Dwight said a number of really interesting things I don't think most of us could argue with. To me, though, what I've been disappointed with the streaming experience, whether you cut the cord completely or you're like me, which has cable, because I've always been a cable guy. I don't like paying $200 a month, but that's such is life. But don't you think that the quality of the content has declined? I mean, there's so much content. I mean, you cannot possibly keep up with much of the stuff that's being produced, natively by many of the major streaming companies. But when I think of the quality of content, I mean, think of the number of subscribers that Netflix attracted when it had House of Cards, because it was such a very well done show, putting Kevin Spacey aside and all his shenanigans. But don't you think that there's also a quality of content issue here as well? That
I do not. And I'll tell you a couple of things. First, it's really difficult for me anyway to compare the cord cutting with streaming and making a one-to-one comparison, because when you're cord cutting, you're essentially replacing one form of access to the same content with another, where streaming services by and large give you a completely different world of content, excluding HBO, which there's crossover in Showtime, but all the other ones. Second thing is, I'm going to the movies this weekend. We're finally getting around to go to see Barbie. And going to the local AMC theater, just for me and my wife, the tickets, even with my senior citizen discount, is going to cost us $40 to see one movie. The fact that I can pay Netflix $21, $22, $25 for a month of unlimited content, to me, is the bargain of the century. On the content quality side, I think the problem is not the content quality, but finding out what's worth watching to begin with. I just finished binging season 1 of a series called Silo on Apple TV, which I had never heard of. I saw it mentioned in some store and I went, I've not seen that. And I went looking for reviews. It's getting fantastic reviews and it's a fabulous show, but I didn't see, and I'm an Apple person, I didn't get anything about this show being on. And it was for when it was in the middle of the stream, it was the top rated show on Apple TV, not Foundation, which I have yet to get to. I'm waiting for the season to finish filling up. I have a list that I keep on my notepad of about 24 series that I'm waiting to get to. Reservoir Dogs, season 3 of Murders in the Building, the last season of War of the Worlds with Gabriel Byrne. I have a huge list of things that I want to get to, and that's only the stuff I know about. And I know that there's a lot of other quality stuff that I just haven't either heard of or done a search for what else might I like kind of things to go see. We've stumbled across so many things on all of these that I had never heard of, and we just got engrossed on series that I would never have seen on cable anywhere. So I don't think the quality of the shows are going down. I think it's their ability to tell us what's good or for us to find out what's out there.
And Mark, if you have not explored Apple TV Plus, Apple TV Plus is the new HBO, and the way HBO was, and the quality on that is fantastic.
Let me jump in for a second. Apple Plus, they won my heart with from Hear the Moon. That about the
For All Mankind.
For All Mankind. Right.
That was. But it wasn't just special effects. The narrative, the attention to detail in terms of history. You know, if this happened, this thing might have not have happened. There was it's in the first episode that they imply that Ted Kennedy, he didn't go to Chappaquiddick that weekend on the moon landing, and then since that accident never happened, it allowed him to run for the presidency in 1972. I mean, that to me, if you're a history buff and you like alternative history, The Man in the High Castle is another.
Yep, I still haven't gotten to the final season of that.
No. But John, let me pull you into this. Are you a complete cord cutter, or are you kind of a combo type of guy?
I have different residences, and I sort of use a variety of things. So I can't really be a cord cutter. Like if I want to see the Formula One race, I got to see the Formula One race. Well, I'm not going to subscribe to Sling just for that. I mean, it just gets exponentially, and I'm paying for services. Like my daughter has several services so that she's got to have them, which I don't watch at all. But, as a dad, that's just something that you're going to do. I think the quality is an issue. If I see another one of these Netflix shows with the overhead drone shot of the forest and the car driving through it, I
can guarantee there's nothing like that on Silo.
Oh my God. It's just like, I've got a drone too. I've got several drones too, but if another director does that on Netflix, I'm going to scream. I think the quality.
I think John's made a very, very good point. I mean, if you go on to Netflix or any other services, you know what genre film that I really like, because I can't get enough of it, is some type of apocalyptic, not 100 years from now, but some type of thing that's happening in the near term when there's a nuclear war. Or
you're gonna love Silo.
I know, and I should. For that
Not
reason.
If it's another little girl I've got to save and get her from point A to point B, and it's like kind of Mad Max meets,
You're watching the wrong shows, John.
Well, no, he's talking about The Last of Us, which is fantastic, and it's based on a video game.
Yes.
So, The Last of Us is great.
Right, let me give you the last word on it. Do you really think that, when you think about the price increases that have happened, especially with Netflix, the crackdown on password stuff, which we haven't really seen yet because it hasn't kicked in completely yet, content pruning, which is a polite way of saying that they're, Disney especially, they're unloading a lot of content because I guess they figure they have too much of a content smorgasbord. Do you really think that there's going to be some type of backlash over time? Do you think people will accept it?
I think there's still probably some wiggle room. I mean, the fact that what happened with Netflix with the password sharing crackdown, and it is still rolling out. I got hit immediately, and and had to tell my kids, sorry, guys. But I think the Netflix password sharing crackdown, the fact that they didn't have lots of subscribers fleeing in anger, says that, most people will tolerate it. To Stewart's comment about, it's a great bargain. For Netflix, you were talking. The most you can pay for Netflix is $20 a month. That gets you a 4K stream, and unfortunately, that's the only way you can get 4K on Netflix.
Commercial free.
Right, but you can go all the way down if you're willing to sit through ads, which I am not. But if you're willing to sit through ads, you can go back down to $6.99. So there's a wide range there, and Netflix was actually really very smart by introducing this ad-free tier just before they did the password crackdown. It was really smart, and so you have a lot of people going to it. By the way, if you have a 4K TV and you haven't seen it on Netflix, watch Katla, Katla, which is an Icelandic show. And yes, John, I think there are drone shots from above.
Of course.
That is about this little community at the foot of a erupting volcano in Iceland, and the 4K effect. Everything is very gray and ashen, except the director uses splashes of color in the human activity, and it is one of the best uses of 4K I've ever seen. And it's also a really compelling story, really good kind of Nordic sci-fi. Highly recommended.
Only if they play Sigur Rós as part of the soundtrack, then I'm watching it. But
I think they do.
I love when I went to Reykjavik, I think I watched, a bunch of Icelandic. I love the foreign movies. I have to say the streaming services, that's one thing that they have opened up, is a lot of foreign material. And that has made video entertainment, and the programming more global and culturally diverse. Absolutely, that's a great thing. But I do think, just coming back to the crackdown on password sharing, I think they're going to hit a ceiling really fast, because the demographic of people doing that, it's really college students, and your roommates go off in different directions, and so there's no way for you to authenticate it again. But actually, in the family situation, there is. I mean, if you wanted to, you can defeat that system really easily. It's just, are you persistent enough every time to do it? And that's where I think it comes down to.
That's what Netflix is betting on.
Yeah.
Well, let's hit the last topic. This will be a fun one to hit. Stewart, only you could want to talk about, and actually it's relevant. I don't mean to dismiss it, but it is amazing when you kind of take a pause, especially doing what we do, where you're always kind of, you're attracted to the next bright, shiny object. There is a lot of legacy technologies that are still stubbornly with us. Incandescent bulbs is one of them. But let's talk about it, and let's tee it up based on what your perspective is.
Well, the incandescent bulb, first of all, Edison didn't invent it. He perfected it. The patent for it had been around for at least 40 years before Edison finally figured out how to do it. But the importance of the electric light bulb, first of all, it's the first electronic product, and it's what prompts the first wiring of a city, New York City, with electric power, DC by Edison, which later sparks the current wars of the 1880s and 1890s with Tesla's AC scheme. But the light bulb is what creates what is the foundation for the modern world, because it makes electricity something that everybody suddenly has to have. And the fact that bulb is, until this year, still on the market. They hadn't improved on the electric light bulb for 150 years. Just think of the flows of technology that have come through our lives over that period of time. And it's that bulb that looks almost exactly the same as it did when Edison first flipped the switch on it. And the screw part of it is still referred to as the Edison base in the lighting industry. So this one technology, now the other half of it, is when Edison was experimenting with it, he noticed, he was not a scientist, he was merely an experimenter, but he noticed that there was a flow of electrons going through the heat that was going through between the filaments. Had no idea what it was. He marked it down. It was called the Edison effect. The flow of electrons leads, what he invented essentially was the vacuum tube. And the vacuum tube leads to radio, which leads to the transistor, which leads to the microchip. So the very basis for our computer technologies lies in that little glass bulb that a guy who didn't know half of what he knew because he was not he had a 6th grade education. That product is the foundation for what we are doing here today and how everybody lives.
Dwight, I have to ask you what your reaction to that is.
Well, I think he's right. I forget, there was a really good PBS series about connections in technology, how one thing led to the other.
Oh yeah.
I forget the name of that, but that's exactly what he's talking about. One of the really interesting things about any of these older technologies is that they often came about from people trying to do something else. Air conditioning was not originally developed to cool your home. It was originally developed to take water out of the air.
Yes.
And the side effect was that it cools your home. And let me tell you something, here in Houston, we are really glad we have air conditioning. And the city wouldn't exist without it, probably, at least in the form it is now. And so all of these things kind of have, they're legacy technologies, but all of them have very modern impacts in the way they developed.
No, I violently agree with that. If you look at light, for example, I mean, you flash back to the late 1800s. I mean, the workday stopped at dusk. I mean, talk about economic activity. I mean, that came to a halt. Factories, to which there were, that stopped. And interestingly, is that you could argue, I think, that kind of that sliding doors effect. One thing happens, and then 7 or 8 other good things happen that come out of that. And you could argue that the electric bulb, changed the world on a variety of different levels. John, what are your thoughts? John, do you still use electric bulbs? John?
Yeah, it's funny. I just replaced. I'm on to the 3rd generation because I remember testing the first compact fluorescents. So I've gone through that. They said those would never die. They do die. So now I've replaced them with LEDs that have also died now. And so I'm on to the next one. But I just put some in my daughter's room and she wanted that yellow bulb that we're showing right there. I mean, that's still people like that softer, they've had to tune the LED bulbs down to get them into that range. Out west, the tendency is to give the brighter sunlight, bluish, cooler lights. That's what people seem to like out west. But here in the east, we still like the yellow. So it's interesting that that's still hanging around, even if those bulbs do finally go away, which they're working very hard to eliminate. But I think Stewart's right. And the termination of where we're at now with technology for me, which we didn't talk about, but is out in San Francisco. I think, yes, we should have more autonomous vehicles running around and learning more things and getting better. And the whole, resistance to that was kind of silly. They have 0 accidents and fatalities running around right now. They're getting better and better. And I think that's a big benefit, and you're just going to see technology gradually using this more and more.
I agree. Well, let's wrap it up there because we've gotten to about 33 minutes, and I want to make sure that we don't turn this into a Dr. Zhivago like a podcast. But guys, really, thanks for taking the time for joining me for today's podcast. For our viewing and listening audience, thanks for making the SmartTechCheck podcast part of your day or commute. Please make sure that you hit the like and subscribe buttons at the end of today's podcast, or use these convenient on-screen QR codes to connect with me. You can also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, @MarkFeena. And until next time, have a great week. And Stewart, go Yankees.
Go ahead.